Under the shadow of the Siberian taiga lies a place that has defied logic, terrified explorers, and attracted the persistent curiosity of scientists and occultists alike, the Tunguska region. On June 30th, 1908, something happened there. Something so vast and violent that it leveled over 2,000 square kilometers of forest. Yet there was no crater, no identifiable impact residue, and no conclusive answers even over a century later. The Tunguska event has become one of the most enduring enigmas of the modern age. But behind the explosion, beyond the science, there are whisperings, stories passed down by the local Evenki people, rumors of hidden expeditions, and voices from the periphery of official records that hint at a deeper story. Tonight we dive into the chilling mystery of Tunguska, and the possibility that what fell from the sky that morning was not a meteor, but something infinitely stranger. Imagine it, a remote wilderness of endless pine, larch, and marshland stretching to the horizon. The dawn air crisp, silent except for the hum of insects and the occasional ripple of wind. The locals, reindeer herders, trappers, hunters, were beginning their day. And then the sky tore open, a blinding flash, a shockwave so strong it shattered windows hundreds of kilometers away. Trees were flattened in a circular pattern, miles upon miles of forest bent outward like grass before an invisible giant. Some survivors described a column of fire descending from the heavens, a god's wrath, they said. Others spoke of two suns, one rising as the other fell. One eyewitness, a man named Semyon, said the earth convulsed beneath him and threw him from his chair. The air grew unbearable, like scorching metal. For days afterward, the sky glowed a strange luminescent blue, so bright that people in London could read newspapers at midnight without a lamp. For more than a decade, no formal investigation took place. Siberia was too remote, too hostile. The first scientific expedition didn't arrive until 1927, led by the Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik. By then, the mystery had already sunk roots into folklore. The Evenki people refused to approach the blast zone. They believed it was cursed, the site where Agdi, the thunder god, had hurled down a ball of vengeance. But Kulik was relentless. With a small team, he marched across rivers and swamps, driven by the idea that if he could locate the meteorite fragments, he might reveal something extraordinary. He expected to find a crater, a vast, bowl-shaped depression filled with shattered rock and fused glass, perhaps a remnant of nickel or iron from an asteroid. What he found instead defied sensibility. There was no crater. The center of the explosion was an empty, swampy area where the trees were scorched but still upright, their branches stripped away like burned matchsticks. Around this eerie epicenter, millions of trees lay flattened outward in an almost perfect radial pattern, a giant wheel with its spokes splayed in every direction. The devastation was absolute, yet utterly clean, as if a god's hand had pressed down from above and then lifted gently away. Ines vergin tiakelo kenkens plus jorament creos, sor eto humdisko from disparatet tichits. The many trenches with their plunia kriposa are chagabi canons on me like your simple people, such as may here. Right. To unite dukes tuets are nather that your theat to pick. In more begin in the Dakar and there out geri kuidoja. The man grog up as a nori the free, and ya increase the old one to like that your oil with that. Like a bangalic guardia than that they cut. The devastation was absolute, yet utterly clean, as if a god's hand had pressed down from above and then lifted gently away. Jonas Etagin Tiaka skated the Jamaica Strand be in the Osika for Asia the only fish but Asia so funka that was umrata. That routine is order, collective rise to put out the animats of CB himself. Coolest lead go get what thinking. Think I love about the few rolled. The tacky and the mercury of Shiba of them smoky beat the shift Akium Coke if Sikas on him. Taking with a girl try to Antishika, or the but nobody tawa so I left more. Bingo went to rest the first set of blood motivate. Regarding implication of the heavenly resility allowing extensionality. For the favorite in this life revealed to the better chemist with it. Soviet intelligence files later uncovered in fragments hinted at the recovery of unusual metallic residues in the peat bogs, materials of unknown isotopic ratios, ones that could not have originated naturally on Earth. But then those files vanished. Kulik himself perished during World War II, and his field notes were scattered across archives that mysteriously suffered fires and reorganizations. Then came 1967. Two Soviet scientists, Andrei Olkovatov and Felix Ziegel published papers proposing that the Tunguska object was not a meteor at all, but a craft, an unknown flying object whose propulsion system or energy core malfunctioned upon atmospheric entry. Their work was ridiculed publicly, but discussed behind closed doors. Reports surfaced of intermittent electromagnetic anomalies from the region, decades after the explosion. Compasses spinning wildly, radio interference, sudden surges in atmospheric ionization. Magnetometers recorded brief fluctuations inconsistent with normal terrestrial variation. How could the Earth remember something so old, unless there was still something buried beneath, still active? Local folklore deepened the enigma. The Avenchi descendants spoke of a metallic visitor that came down hot and silent, rising again after impact as if to return home. Others said that in the years following the blast, strange lights hovered over the taiga at night, blue-white spheres drifting in silence before dissipating into starlight. Some modern UFO researchers have drawn unsettling parallels to what they call plasmoid intelligence, manifestations of living or conscious energy forms that appear as balls of light and interact with witnesses deliberately. Did Tunguska witness the death of such an entity, or merely its transformation? Fast forward to the late 20th century, when a few secret American and Russian joint research teams conducted deep core drilling in the Tunguska peat bogs to analyze the microscopic glassy spherules embedded in the soil. These micrograins, tiny glass beads, did not correspond to typical meteorite impact materials. Their isotopic structure was alien, possibly synthetic. Some researchers, bound by non-disclosure agreements, hinted that the particles were pre-fusion composites, similar to alloys produced in high-energy reactors. Yet when independent labs requested to repeat the analysis, access was denied. Samples went missing.
The official explanation remained frozen in bureaucratic ambiguity.
A probable extraterrestrial stony comet exploded prior to surface impact.
Still, anomalies multiplied.
Satellite magnetometry in the early 2000s discovered a faint circular magnetic anomaly near the blast's theoretical epicenter. A perfect ring roughly 8 kilometers across, centered around an area with higher than normal ground conductivity. Beneath that ring, sensors detected void spaces, cavities stretching downward like tunnels. But drilling results were never published, and the research station that collected the data fell silent after a mysterious fire destroyed its main lab. No one has claimed responsibility. No further expeditions have been granted permits to revisit the area without military oversight. Curiously, the Tunguska explosion occurred at an exact time, just past 14 in the morning, when Earth was aligned with several gravitational vectors of the solar system. In 2008, a team from the Russian Academy of Sciences noted subtle harmonic coincidences between this alignment and Earth's Schumann resonance, a frequency that underlies the natural electromagnetic heartbeat of our planet. They suggested Tunguska might not have been a random cosmic incident, but a resonance-based detonation, triggered by something interacting with Earth's electromagnetic field. Were they hinting at technology, or something organic, something aware? Let's imagine for a moment that Tunguska was an accident, an advanced craft not of this world, entering our atmosphere and losing control. What would happen? The tremendous heat generated by atmospheric friction could force the craft to eject its energy core before disintegration, an act of self-destruction to prevent contamination. That alone could explain the mid-air explosion, a massive release of energy at altitude, no debris but total devastation below. The blue glowing skies might have been the result of residual ionization or an energy field dissipating. It fits, disturbingly well. Yet the human stories, often ignored in scientific chronicles, may hold hidden truth. Villagers far from the blast reported hearing not one but multiple detonations. Some said 3, like rhythmic thunder from above. Others claimed to see an object streaking across the sky that suddenly veered course mid-flight, as if under control. Nearly 2 decades later, when Kulik reached the scene, the Evenki hunters still refused to approach the central swamp. One old man claimed that whenever birds flew near it, they circled and avoided the middle. His people said the air there hummed, even in stillness. Historian Alexei Soloviev once unearthed a forgotten telegram from 1908, sent by a meteorological station in Irkutsk at the time of the explosion. It described an unusual oscillation in Earth's magnetic field, a spike lasting nearly 5 hours. The signal was identical in pattern to electromagnetic disturbances recorded during high-altitude nuclear tests in the mid-20th century. But in 1908, there were no such technologies. What could have produced that signal? Could something artificial, alien or otherwise, have released an energy signature akin to nuclear detonation decades before the atomic age? Some Soviet-era declassified experiments in the 1960s suggest a connection to Nikola Tesla's own research. Tesla had been experimenting with directed energy transmissions from his Wardenclyffe Tower around 1908. Theoretical conspiracies claim he may have conducted a large-scale test, targeting coordinates in Siberia, an attempt to demonstrate wireless global power transmission. Within hours of the Tunguska explosion, Tesla reportedly ceased his project abruptly and dismantled his systems. He never publicly explained why. Was this a tragic coincidence, or something more sinister? Could Tesla's experiment have interacted with some latent extraterrestrial mechanism hovering above Siberia, triggering the explosion? The thought is both absurd and strangely compelling. If we dig deeper into myths of the region, we find eerie resonance across ages. The Evenki have legends of the burnt sky dating back centuries before 1908, a repeating motif of fiery descent that cleanses and renews the forest. They describe spherical fire spirits visiting once every long cycle of years, purifying the land. Could Tunguska have been a recurring event? A cyclical manifestation of something ancient that awakens at intervals? Modern astrophysicists have noted that the torrid meteor stream, through which Earth passes roughly every June, could be home to large unseen bodies, remnants of a fragmented comet. But what if the remnant itself carries something unknown? Something unnatural embedded within? Consider this. Every few centuries, a fragment from the torrid swarm approaches Earth more closely. In planetary defense circles, some scientists whisper that one such object, called 2005 NB56, follows a trajectory not unlike the reconstructed course of the Tunguska object. And in just a few decades, it will pass close again. This isn't apocalypse talk, it's mathematics. But the coincidence unsettles even the rationally minded. If something deliberately manipulated that orbit once, might it do so again? Throughout the Cold War, multiple expeditions attempted to revisit Tunguska under various guises. Atmospheric research, forestry studies, magnetic anomaly surveys. Each expedition returned with reports of strange interference patterns. Instruments malfunctioned, compass bearings warped inexplicably, batteries drained faster than expected. One 1984 account by geophysicist Stanislav Vereshchagin described luminous fogs appearing suddenly in the night, hovering over tents before dispersing. Two of his team members later reported vivid hallucinations of lights and voices, telling them to leave. After that, their logs became incoherent until the expedition was aborted. Official reports cite extreme fatigue due to mosquito infestation. Yet their recordings, preserved on damaged tape, capture faint subsonic hums frequencies outside the human voice range. The hum. Even today, visitors to the region sometimes speak of it, a low vibration, felt rather than heard, especially at dusk. It seems to emanate from the swamp at the epicenter, pulsing faintly through the ground. Scientists blame geothermal vents, but seismic data shows no activity. Others suspect piezoelectric effects from quartz in the soil under magnetic stress. Yet some claim the hum reacts to presence, growing softer or louder depending on movement nearby. In 2012, a team of independent researchers equipped with drone-mounted ground-penetrating radar scanned the area and detected a large, perfectly hemispherical cavity approximately 50 meters beneath the swamp. The data, briefly available online before being pulled, indicated an object reflecting radar pulses irregularly, suggesting a metallic structure several dozen meters wide. Shortly after, their funding disappeared. Their site was shut down, and the radar operator who supervised the data interpretation reportedly vanished while hiking in the region. There's no proof, only rumor. But every rumor grows from a seed. Let's think of what could still lie beneath the peat and roots. A machine unrecognizable by our standards, made of materials impervious to corrosion, silently dormant for more than a century. What if, after the airburst, remnants of its core sank deep below, continuing to emit faint electromagnetic signatures? Could the hum be its heartbeat? If so, why has no greater catastrophe followed? Maybe whatever came down wasn't a weapon or a probe, but an arc, an attempt to hide or bury something intentionally, an object sealed within the earth, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. Ancient Siberian folklore speaks of beings known as the Sky Iron who descended in fire to plant the seeds of knowledge before vanishing below ice and soil. Perhaps Tunguska is the scar left from their return, or their burial. The juxtaposition of such legends with modern anomalies is uncanny. Yet in countless societies across the planet, tales persist of fiery gods descending from the heavens in bright wheels or columns of light, destroying and creating in equal measure. What if our myths are simply distorted memories of ancient encounters with forces beyond comprehension, encounters like Tunguska? But let us not drift too far from the physical evidence. When Japanese scientists collected microscopic spheres of silica and magnetite from the soil, they found traces of carbon-14 isotopes inconsistent with terrestrial ratios, as though the elements had been exposed to deep space radiation. The layers of peat, dated precisely, confirmed a single violent event. Still no fragments of stone or metal large enough to call a meteorite. What remains is a paradox, a blast without body, energy without origin. The magnitude of the explosion is estimated between 10 and 15 megatons of TNT, roughly 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Imagine such energy released over uninhabited wilderness instead of a city. Was it luck, or was the location chosen intentionally because it was remote, devoid of witnesses? Some believe that whatever guided it, the craft, the object, the intelligence, sacrificed itself to prevent a greater calamity. An act of containment, perhaps. There's a transcript from an interview conducted in 1930 with one of the surviving Event elders. He said, in rough translation, the firebird came down angry, but it looked and saw no man below, and so it turned aside before it struck. That image, a sentient firebird changing course mid-descent, haunts the imagination. Could our planet's history be littered with such invisible guardian encounters, each perceived as miracle, myth, or mystery? Was Tunguska a deliberate self-destruction to save life? Modern astronomers occasionally detect bolides, massive atmospheric explosions of rocks that never reach the ground, such as the Chelyabinsk incident in 2013. The similarities are striking, but so too are the differences. Chelyabinsk left ample fragments, visible dust trails, and trace elements consistent with chondrite meteorites. Tunguska left nothing of the sort. It's as if the explosion was calibrated, not chaotic, but precise, cleansing the area perfectly. And after all these years, the forest continues to behave oddly. Satellite vegetation studies show accelerated regrowth in the blast zone. Trees there grow faster, denser, as though something in the soil stimulates them. Radiation levels are normal, but geneticists discovered subtle deviations in chloroplast DNA frequencies within the local flora compared to control samples. Mutation without radiation, adaptation without cause. It's as though the land itself remembers and evolves. In 2017, an expedition involving quantum geobiologists, the kind of fringe researchers working at the intersection of physics and life sciences, set up an array of superconductive magnetometers to test if the area emitted low-frequency electromagnetic coherence patterns. On the third night, their instruments recorded repeating pulses spaced in prime number intervals: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The sequence lasted for 31 minutes before fading entirely. Was it random noise or an encoded signal? No consensus exists. The data is out there, to those who look deep enough. Now step back and consider an idea. What if Tunguska wasn't an arrival, but a departure? What if something long buried beneath Siberia awakened then? Something ancient, forced upward in a single blinding surge. An exodus, not an impact. After all, seismic readings suggest minor vertical ground displacement during the explosion, as if pressure thrust upward from within. Maybe, just maybe, the object didn't fall. It rose. In that case, whatever left could still be out there, untraceable, orbiting quietly above, or traveling beyond the reach of human awareness. Some amateur astronomers have claimed fleeting radar echoes matching no known orbital debris, moving erratically over the Tunguska longitude on anniversary nights. Coincidence? Or ritual of return? Humans have always sought rational order in chaos, but Tunguska resists. It stands as both wound and whisper, a reminder that our world remains a place of unfathomable forces, whether born of physics, accident, or entities beyond comprehension. The fact remains, in 1 second over 80 million trees were flattened, animals vaporized, air ignited, and not a single shard of origin left behind. The more science digs, the deeper the mystery becomes. Somewhere out there, in government archives, in personal notes of forgotten physicists, in classified geological samples, lies the answer. Maybe we're not prepared for it. Maybe the Tunguska explosion was never meant to be unraveled, because its explanation leads not to comfort, but to revelation, that we are not merely observers of the cosmos, but participants in an ancient dialogue written in spheres of fire and silence. If you close your eyes and listen, beyond the static, beyond the hum of modern life, you might still hear it, that distant echo from 1908 resonating through Earth's magnetic heart, a reminder that sometimes the truth doesn't fall from the sky. Sometimes it awakens from beneath and waits, and somewhere deep in the Siberian taiga, beneath moss and mud and time, something sleeps still, dreaming in prime numbers, humming faintly to the rhythm of the earth, until, one morning, when the blue light returns to the sky,